As you decide, if you haven't cast your ballots already for the August primary, what you're going to do. I would note that even probably the most progressive state in the union is taking a more aggressive stance on issues like homelessness and crime than we are. And I'm talking about California. And I've said on the show, like Gavin Newsom, he is finding his election year courage, and so I'm not going to give him all the credit in the world. After all this time, he suddenly, in an important election year, wants to act like, oh, we're going to be tough on crime. He sent out a tweet the other day saying, we need to pursue criminals. We need to have more police pursuits. It's like, what? And then, of course, he made an executive order after the Supreme Court ruling that said it's not cruel and unusual punishment to clear homeless encampments. He made an executive order. I don't care about his motivations at this point. At least he did it, saying we're going to crack down on homeless encampments. And absolutely, they are cracking down on homeless encampments. Here is a video that was sent out by the San Francisco Standard. So it shows police officers in San Francisco, as the Standard characterizes it, aggressively clearing a homeless encampment. And heck, they kind of are. I mean, they're in there. The homeless guy's trying to keep his tent, and they're not letting him. And they're saying, look, you can't keep everything. He's trying to pull stuff like, it looks like trash. I mean, it might be some of his belongings. They let him grab a few things. But then you can barely hear it in the video, but the officer tells him, like, hey, Governor Newsom, London breed, they say homeless encampments are no more. So we're not allowing this anymore. And I think that that's significant. Like, look, if it took an election year for you to change course in San Francisco, an area of the country that has struggled with homelessness and drugs more than any other, like, fine. I'm not going to pat you on the back. I'm not going to donate to your political campaigns, but I will give you credit for doing it even late, because that's more than I can say for what's happening in Washington State. Dave Reichert had a press conference down in South King County. Dave Reichert, a Republican candidate for governor. He had a press conference yesterday in South King County, and he called on Governor Jay Inslee to follow, I almost can't say the sentence, to follow Gavin Newsom's lead. Here it is.
People want real solutions to the problems we are facing, like homelessness and public safety. Today I call on Governor Inslee to sign a similar order to get people the help they need, get them off the streets and into services. I will sign this order on the day of my administration in January 2025.
So he's saying, do what Gavin Newsom did. If you don't, then the first day of my administration, I'll sign an order to do exactly what Gavin Newsom is now suddenly doing down in California. And he also called on Bob Ferguson to, on the record, state whether he supports what's happening down in California. And some people might say, well, that's just too aggressive of a sweep. And you can't do that to the homeless people and rip their tents away. Those are the people who have let them for 10 years, have let people camp on the streets in filth and squalor where they die with needles in their arm. So remember that. When, like, the San Francisco Standard, they want to characterize that as aggressive sweeps, like, oh, don't do this, that's really mean to the homeless people. And it isn't mean to let them stay in place in a tent where they're more likely to be murdered, raped, overdose of drugs, succumb to the elements. That's compassionate. That's the way to go. But saying, hell no, you're not doing this anymore. Like, give me that tent. We have help for you. We have shelter beds for you. And if you want a shelter bed, you're going to have to get help and for your mental illness, for your substance abuse, and you're no longer going to be on the streets on the verge of death, deteriorating our society. Like, I'm sorry. That's compassion. That's what we call tough love. Remember? We used to love tough love from parents. It's like, yeah, give them a little tough love. It's time for tough love for the homeless and the drug addicts. And if Gavin freaking Newsom can do it, we can certainly do it in Washington State. Now, if you are a member of Governor Jay Inslee's executive staff, you believe you're already doing that, which is wild. But I saw a tweet yesterday from a staffer for Inslee. Her name is Jamie Smith, who I have never had anything but a nice relationship with. Jamie Smith. She's actually pretty good with the media. And so, I don't like her tweet here. I don't think it's honest or sincere, but this is by no means a personal attack on Jamie Smith, who has been a communications director with the governor for some time now. She tweeted out, "Psst, Reichert, The Newsom order you endorsed today to address encampments is what Washington state is already doing. Glad you agree it's a better strategy than your weird prior... Weird again, you people. That's a mental illness. Weird prior proposals to sweep people to McNeil Island or Evergreen College. I actually like the idea of put them on an island or put them in Evergreen and connect them to services, whatever it is. So I don't know what she's talking about when she says we're already doing that. I have seen nothing even resembling the video we just played out of San Francisco happening on state property in Washington. Now, you may recall that Governor Inslee did launch a homelessness right-of-way initiative where they were going to methodically remove the homeless encampments that were lining the interstates. And when I mean lining, I mean you could drive from Seattle to Olympia and there would be miles of tents along I-5. So yeah, I mean, I'll give it to the governor that they started a right-of-way initiative to move these tents. But remember the exclusive reporting we had on that right-of-way initiative? It was costing about $1 million per person to remove them from those encampments and get them out of homelessness. So I'm sorry, but if you're holding that up as some tremendous success, it's not. And when I went to Olympia at the beginning of this last legislative session for the annual legislative preview where reporters and media can come and can ask questions, I remember asking the budget committee, do you think that's a good use of taxpayer funds? Nearly $1 million per homeless person to get them out of a tent along a freeway and out of homelessness. And they said, well, Brandi, the Democrats, oh, you can't put a price on a human life. Like, I can't put a price on how much each individual's life is worth to get them out of a tent. And of course, that's just a, straw man. They want to make you feel bad for asking a legitimate question about the failure of this program. Because my retort to that and what I pointed out to them is you could help even more human beings for $1 million. That's the point. As opposed to saying, oh, it's human life, it's $1 million. It's like, but what if I told you, if you weren't so helplessly incompetent, and if we didn't have so much government bureaucracy, that we could help maybe even 1,000 human beings for $1 million. So it's just disingenuous for Inslee's team to say, we're already doing what's being done in California. You're not doing what's suddenly being done in California. You ought to be doing it because it's not compassion to do what you're doing. It's not fiscally responsible to do what you're doing. And people are dying because you're doing what you're doing too damn slowly. So credit to Dave Reichert for committing to saying, I'm going to follow Gavin Newsom's lead, even if that sentence is very, very hard to muster. And Governor Inslee should do it too. And Bob Ferguson should say whether he's committed to taking a more aggressive approach to homelessness. And if he's elected governor, the media needs to hold him accountable for it. I will not hold my breath because the media is not holding him accountable right now for pretending all of a sudden like he's this very moderate Democrat in the last 6 months. And the media is like, oh, look at him. He loves cops. He'll fight crime. Like he'll be fiscally responsible and cut taxes. And it's like, you guys sound like propagandists. This is like some communist China stuff where you will not simply point out that Bob Ferguson is taking on he's like shed an exoskeleton. He's like pretending to be a completely different person and the media is absolutely failing. It's really, really wild stuff.